Hello there, guys. Good afternoon. This is Dr. Ferdinand Piano from University of Makati, and today we are going to be talking about another important um, topic in the research world, no, or in thesis writing, and this is called the IMRAD format. No? So this presentation or this video demo presentation will speak or will discuss how do we organize our research paper using the IMRAD format. Now, before I proceed into the details of all this lecture, I would like to emphasize the point uh, that the lecture materials that I'm going to be sharing with you is authored by Mr. Ramachandran Nair and Vimala D. Nair. So I guess these two are either siblings uh, or related to one another. Okay, so this particular video lecture is, this particular lecture material can also be found in this website, no? That's linkspringer.com. Okay, at ito po yung title ng kanilang article, Scientific Writing and Communication in Agriculture and Natural Resources, particularly found on pages 13 to 25. So there. So in this video lecture, I'm gonna be teaching you, or I'm gonna be telling you, uh, how to prepare your research paper using the IMRAD format. Because I've heard, as far as I know, also that the IMRAD format is actually the most or the widely used template or format in publishing a research paper. Okay, remember that a research can only be called as a research or a legitimate research if your paper has reached the publication stage, meaning na publish po siya, no? Kung ito po kasing mga research po or yung mga thesis po na ginagawa natin sa school, no, both in the undergrad program and in the master's program or in the graduate studies programs, kapag hindi po siya nakarating sa publication, no, or sa mga research journals, is parang wala pong naging saysay or wala pong naging silbi yung ating ginawang research or yung pinaghirapan po natin, no, for I guess half a year, or for some, no, umaabot pa ng more than a year, no. So sayang po yung effort natin kung hindi po siya nakakarating sa publication. So here I'm going to be teaching you what an IMRAD format is, and I'm gonna also going to be sharing with you the IMRAD format of my own research paper, which I'm going to be showing to you right after ko pong tapusin yung aking mga presentation. Or maybe in the middle of the discussion, papakita ko po sa inyo kung paano po isinsulat yung isang IMRAD format, no, na isang research paper. Okay po? So to proceed, let's talk about, or let's define quickly, no, what an IMRAD is. Although I'm pretty sure that your teachers or your professors must have told you about this already, or maybe nakita niyo na po ito sa iba't ibang mga social media videos, no, such as YouTube, for example. So baka may idea na rin po kayo. But just to reiterate the point lang po, no? So ano ba talaga yung IMRAD? IMRAD is considered as the most scientific papers are prepared according to a format called the IMRAD. So the term represents the first letter of the words introduction, materials and methods, results, and discussions. It indicates a pattern of format rather than a complete list of headings or components of research papers. The missing parts of the paper, however, are as follows. No? So bukod doon sa IMRAD na initials, no, like introduction, materials and methods, results and discussion, composing the IMRAD acronyms, no, may mga part din po ng isang IMRAD format na hindi na po binanggit doon sa acronym ng IMRAD, no? So these are the title, the authors, the keywords, the abstract, the conclusion, and the references. Now, additionally, some papers include acknowledgements and appendices. Pero actually depende rin po yung kabuuang part ng isang IMRAD research paper ay nakadepende rin po talaga yan doon sa journal, research journal or publication na inyong pinagpasahan, or or ni-request nyo, no, o inilaban nyo, no, para i-include yung inyong research sa kanilang research journal. Kasi may iba't ibang template din po na ginagamit ng iba't ibang mga research journals. Depende po kung ano yung mga requirements na hihingi nila sa inyo. Okay? Kagaya po ng mamaya, ipapakita ko sa inyo yung template po na ginamit ko, yung format po na ginamit ko nung ako'y nagpasa ng aking research sa isang research journal. Okay? Sometimes some sections might be represented and or amplified by others. No? Example, in theory instead of materials and methods, etc. So, may iba't ibang mga parts na pwedeng magkaroon ng variation depende nga po doon sa uri or depende nga po doon sa guidelines na hihingiin sa atin ng ating mga research journals. Okay? Next. So, the introduction explains the scope and objective of the study in light of the current knowledge on the subject. So, ang laman po ng introduction is basically about what is the scope or the objective of the study. Yung scope po, yung content o yung sakop ng ginagawa niyong research. And of course, along with that is may state nyo na rin po kung ano yung mga objectives na kailangan yung ma-resolve, no? Doon sa ginagawa niyong research. So all of that must be indicated in the introduction part. Okay, later po, may pag-uusapan po natin in detail yung bawat part ng IMRAD na yan. Okay? Then materials and methods describes how the study was conducted. Okay? So ano po yung mga methods and materials na ginamit when the researcher conducted that particular research. Then results section reports was found in the study. So ano po yung results na derive natin from doing that research. And last will be the discussion section explaining the meaning and the significance of the results and provide suggestion for future directions of research. So itong mga to, itong IMRAD na acronym na to, we will discuss that, no, in the latter part or in the middle and to the latter part of our presentation. Okay? The manuscript must be prepared according to the journal's instructions to authors. Like I said, no? So yung content po talaga ng ating research ay nakadepende po sa research journal na pagpresenta natin ng ating research paper. No? Kasi bawat research journal may kanya-kanya silang unique design or unique na template na ginagamit, no, or na ina-adapt. Okay, but none is basically the standard template, no? Kasi nga may kanya-kanya silang unique style, okay? An important point to keep in mind is that there is no standard or uniform style that is followed by all journals. Okay? As I've said, each journal has its own style, but they have their own instructions to authors. Okay? So on and so forth. So ito pong nakita nyo, yan na po yung pinaka-summary, no? Yan na po dapat yung pinaka-laman ng isang research paper. Kompleto na po yung halos lahat ng nabanggit dito. Title, authors, so on and so forth. Excuse me. Next is, once you select a journal to which you wish to submit your manuscript, please follow the journal's instructions to authors, which can usually be found in each volume of the journal. Note that volume may contain several numbers, and there could be multiple volumes in a year or easily accessed from the journal's webpage. So, like I've mentioned, no, may iba't ibang instructions po na pwedeng hingiin sa inyo yung mga research journals na yan, kung paano nyo po i-disenyo yung inyong research, no? Kasi yung iba dyan, talagang dinesenyo nila ng ganun yung laman para maging unique nga na every time that particular research journal would require their researchers to submit their research paper, ganyan na ganyan yung makikita yung hitsura. Okay po? Now to continue, review papers do not have results and discussions, and they usually use other headings instead of IMRAD headings. So iba naman po yung mga review papers lang, no, as compared to a full research paper, no, using the IMRAD format. Yung mga yan po kasi is parang more on nagbibigay lang sila ng mga comments, no, doon sa mga nabasa nilang mga researches, and they make their own conclusions, no, based on what they found or what they discovered from a particular research or group of researchers. Now let's talk about the main parts of an IMRAD thesis paper. Of course, nandyan yung title. No? Okay. So ano po ba yung mga dapat natin tandaan, no, in writing our title? The title of the paper will be read more than any other part. The way in which a paper is browsed by readers is in this order: title, abstract, results, tables and figures, before they proceed to the full paper. Dito po medyo may magugulat kayong isang trivia, no, or revelation kung ano po ba yung behavior ng mga researchers and reviewers kapag sila po ay nakaka-encounter ng isang research paper. The prevailing trend is said to be that, on average, the number of readers from one section to the next in line in the above sequence decreases by a factor of 10. Anong ibig pong sabihin nun? So, sa bawat 10 nakakita o nakabasa ng title, isa lang doon ang magbabasa ng abstract. Or let's put it this way, no, para makita nyo talaga yung factor of 10. For every 100 readers or researcher or reviewer na nagbasa ng title or nakakita ng title or research title, only 10 from them will proceed to the abstract and read the content of the abstract. Okay? So on and so forth. That means for every 10 readers who look at the title, one reads the abstract. For every 10 who read the abstract, one goes to the result section. Okay? So on and so forth. Now just to make it simple, may 100 researchers na nakabasa ng isang title or nakakita ng isang research at tiningnan yung title, 10 from them, 10 out of the 100 will proceed to the abstract and read the content of the abstract. From that 10, okay, now let's make it 100 na lang puli sila. Let's say that 10 becomes another 100%. 10% from that who read the abstract will proceed to the results, tables and figures. Okay, so on and so forth. And then from there, only 10, okay, or 1 out of those 10 will proceed to read the full paper. So thus, for every person who read the full paper, 1,000 people or 1,000 researchers read the title. Okay, so ibig sabihin, wala sa 1,000 researchers or reviewers, isa lang doon ang naglakas ng loob na basahin yung buong papel, yung buong research paper. Can you imagine that? So that's the trivia. Titles are read by both scientists scanning the contents of a journal and by those depending on searches through secondary sources, which always carry the title and author, but may or may not carry the abstracts. The title may be reprinted in bibliographies, in subject indices, stored in bibliographic databases, and cited in other articles. Therefore, the title is an extremely important component of the paper. So what does this suggest? No? Mula pa dun sa sinasabi kong 10 factor of 10, no? I-highlight nga na po natin para ma-appreciate natin yung factor of 10 na yan. So what does it say, or so what does it mean? It only means that itong factor of 10 na to is so critical, or I mean the title is so critical that for us to influence readers to read our research, kailangan po very appealing or maganda po yung ginawa nating research title. Okay po? Now, let's see if we have tips here on how to write our research title. A good research title paper should have the following criteria. Number 1, contain as few words as possible. Many journals limit titles to 12 words. Okay, that is I totally agree with that idea, no? That 12 words must be the longest, no, or pinakamadami o pinakamahabang words na pwede mong ilagay sa iyong thesis title. Okay? And besides, kapag lumampas ka kasi dyan, medyo nawawala na doon sa tamang sync or sa tamang tono yung tune, tamang tune, yung pagbabasa mo ng research title. So, yung mga expert researchers kasi kapag binabasa nila yung title, they knew when the research title is good kasi kapag maganda yung flow, no? Maganda yung mood kapag binabasa mo yung research title niya. Dito sa 12 na yan, 12 capsulized words na yan, hindi naman na kinakount dyan yung mga maliliit na mga words like in, is, a, the, yung mga on, it, an, hindi na nila sinasama yung mga yan. Okay? So yung mga solid words lang talaga yung kanilang ini-include, no, in the count ng 12 words na yan. Okay? Next criteria is be easy to understand, of course, no? Para hindi na masyadong nag-iisip yung reviewer or yung researcher kung ano ba yung tungkol saan yung research. And then describe the content of the paper accurately and specifically. Avoid abbreviations, formulas, and jargons. Of course, itong mga abbreviations, formulas, and jargons kasi parang kapag ginamitan mo ng ganyan yung inyong research title, nililimit niya yung audience mo o yung mga reviewers or mga researchers doon sa mga nakakaunawa lang or nakakaintindi lang ng mga abbreviations nyo, ng formulas nyo, and of course, na inyong mga jargons. Okay? Next, not include any verb. Okay, huwag na daw mag-include ng mga verb, mga action words, mga ganyan. Not contain low-impact words such as some on notes or observations on, etc., etc. Yung mga effects, yan. I agree, no? Yung mga effects, mga impact, no? So, sana hindi na dapat ini-include yung mga term na yun. Okay? Next is not to be flashy in the newspapers. Okay? Not be flashy as in newspapers, no? Parang headline sa isang tabloid, no? So, wag po dapat ganun yung impression ng ating research title. Report the subject of the research rather than the results. Okay? Wag po dapat ma-reveal yung results agad doon sa title pa lang. So parang mawawalan kasi ng excitement kung ano yung mapapala or natutuklasan ng mga readers kung reflected na kaagad sa title yung resulta ng inyong research. Follow the style preference of the target journal. So of course, as mentioned, no, so malaking factor din po kasi talaga yung guidelines o yung mga parameters na isiset ng research journal, no, o ng publication para doon sa gagawin yung title. Actually, may mga research title po na dumaan na sa isang research presentation or tinatawag nating mga final defense, no? Yung mga oral defenses at nagawa na po at na-bookbind na po yung mga researches nila. Pero kapag dinala mo na siya sa research journal for publication, sometimes nababago pa yung mga title. You know why? Kasi po kung napag-alaman na yung inyong title ay may kahawig or may kamukhang research title din, no, sa ibang mga ibang mga researchers, wala tayong choice kundi ayusin or baguhin yon, no, or i-rephrase yon para magmukhang kakaiba or magmukhang unique mula doon sa isang pang-research na napatunayang kaparehas ng iyong ginawang research. Okay po. So that's so much about the title. Let's now proceed to the authors. Okay. So authors of a paper are individuals who have made an important contribution to planning and carrying out the research reported. And anyone listed as an author should also have helped in the preparation of the paper, of course. No? So dapat kung kinonsider mo yung sarili mo as an author of or part of the author of that particular research paper, make sure na meron ka namang naging malaking contribution, no? At hindi lang sa ipinalagay mo lang yung pangalan mo doon. Okay? Technicians and other helpers are usually mentioned in the acknowledgement but not necessarily as part of the authors. Okay, ano na ba yung mga technicians na yan? Yung mga nag-review ng grammar, yung mga naging consultant mo in the statistics. Okay? Even yung mga iba pang mga kinonsulta mo para tulungan kang ayusin yung research paper mo. So, technicians lang po silang matatawag. Okay? The panelists, I guess, falls under the technicians also. The authors are listed in the logical order of importance of their contribution to the work. Okay, yan. Isa pa po itong napaka-importanting bagay na dapat nating tandaan na kapag isinusulat daw po yung mga researches, yung mga authors name dun sa isang research, naka-arrange po siya according to the importance of contribution. Siyempre, kung sino may pinakamaraming ambag doon sa ginawa nilang research paper, siya dapat yung nasa unahan. Okay? Yung paglilista po ng mga authors using the alphabetical order ay hindi na daw po masyado ngayong ini-embrace kasi nga po hindi nakikita kung sino po talaga doon yung may pinakamalaking ambag para matapos yung isang research paper. Okay? That's about the authors. Next is the keywords. Okay. Yung mga keywords po is para po siyang listahan lang ng mga salita na importante at pwede po sigurong madalas na mababanggit doon sa loob ng inyong research paper, no? At meron siyang kapirasong bahagi dito sa ating dito sa IMRAD template natin. Okay? So keywords are words, these are words which the paper should be indexed by abstracting services. Words that appear on the title should not be repeated as keywords because titles and keywords are listed together by abstracting services. Most journals allow not more than 6 words. So dapat mga nasa 6 words lang po yung ilalagay nyo doon sa inyong keywords. Okay? So, yeah. So, since maliit lang naman na bagay yung tungkol sa keywords, no, but it's some research journals require to include keywords, others don't require, no. So may mga ganun naman pong mga research journals. So kung hinanapan po tayo ng keywords ng ating research journal for publication, then let's provide. No? Pero kung hindi naman po hinihingi sa atin, okay lang naman din po na huwag na tayo mag-provide. Okay? Next part will be the abstract. No? So an abstract is a mini version of the paper, no? According to Day 1988. The American National Standards Institute, or ANSI, no, says a well-prepared abstract enables readers to identify the basic content of a document quickly and accurately, to determine its relevance to their interest, and thus to decide whether they need to read the document in its entirety. Okay, so that's according to ANSI 1979. Again, ANSI stands for American National Standards Institute. Okay? So parang lumalabas po kasi na yung abstract is the mini paper. No? So parang kung isa-summarize mo yung yung full research paper mo into 100 words or 200 words, no, or mga 250 words, ano po kaya yung magiging laman noon, no? So kung i-summarize mo yung research mo na mayroong kunyari 12 to 15 pages into half a page, no, kalahating page lang, ano-ano po kaya yung magiging discussion doon? So yun po yung inyong abstract. Okay? Most research journals require 200 words to maybe about 250 words. So yun po yung ganun lang po kaigsi yung isang research abstract. Mamaya po papakita ko sa inyo yung research abstract ng aking published research paper. So the abstract should not contain abbreviations and acronyms, okay, references to tables or figures in the paper, literature, citations, any information or conclusion not in the paper itself, of course, no, complex wording and verbose sentences, nabiting verbose wording. No? So, dapat kasi very concise and very precise yung laman ng abstract natin. So, dapat wala na pong mga discussion doon tungkol sa yung laman ng table, mga numbers, hanggat maaari, hindi na tayo masyado nag-i-include doon. No? Except for some, I guess, mga percentages, no, etc., etc. Pero, not so much about numbers and figures. Excuse me. Furthermore, in order to facilitate smooth reading, excessive quantitative data with statistical details should be avoided in the abstract. Again, excessive quantitative data, okay, with statistical details should be avoided in the abstract. Anyway, meron naman pong eksaktong lugar o eksaktong espasyo para sa mga quantitative data na yan. No? So, doon na lang po natin siya hanapin or tingnan. Okay? Experienced writers prepare or fine-tune their title and abstract after the rest of the paper is written. Okay? So, one last thing about an abstract, note, purely narrative content po dapat yung ating abstract. Okay? Puro words, no? Okay, and only few numbers are going to be used. Next. So ito na po yung simula ng ating, although naka 10 slides na po tayo, but those are just the preliminary parts kung tutuusin. Dito pa lang po tayo magsisimulang sulat, no, o ikunin yung part ng ating introduction at dito po i-discuss yung content. No? Okay? Although, kung kayo po ay gumawa na ng full paper na mayroong umabot siguro ng mga close to 100 pages, pag IMRAD mo po kasi yan, imagine, no, from more than 100 page na full research paper mo, pag IMRAD po natin, nasa mga 12 to 15 pages na lang po yan. Ganun na lang po siya kahaba. So, paano po natin paliliitin yung laman ng ating research paper from more than 100 page to 12 to 15 pages. So lahat po ng parts niyan ay maapektuhan. Kasama na po yung introduction. Okay? Usually an introduction in a full paper, no, yung may chapters 1 to 5, no, na research. Usually an introduction consumes about 2 pages to 3 pages siguro, no. Pero sa IMRAD format po natin, halos 3/4 lang ng page, no? Or siguro 1 page will be I guess enough, no. Okay, sapat na siguro yung 1 page para i-cover yung introduction, unless sobrang importante po ng inyong introduction to the point na kailangan niyang mag-exceed more than 1 page. Okay? A good introduction is relatively short. As I have said, it tells why the reader should find the paper interesting, explains why the author carried out the research, and gives the background. The background the reader needs to understand and judge the paper. Okay? Kasi po, yung introduction po natin, bukod sa abstract of course, ang introduction po natin ang magmumulat doon sa ating researcher or reviewer na or other people interested in reading researches, no, na basahin at tingnan yung kabuuan ng ating research paper. Specifically, the introduction defines the nature and extent of the problems studied, relates the research to previous work, usually by a brief review of a literature clearly relevant to the problem, explains the objectives of the investigation, and defines any specialized terms for abbreviations to be used in what follows. Okay? Remember that the introduction leads logically to clearly states the hypothesis or principal theme of the paper. So, dito po sa introduction, dapat maging malinaw po at mabanggit po yung nature at yung extent ng problem na pinag-uusapan. Okay? Relates the research to previous work. So kung meron pong mga mga dating researches na may pagkakahawig, no, or may kinalaman sa ginagawa mong research, ay pwede rin pong mabanggit doon sa introduction. No? Of course, with proper citations na provided. Okay, but not too many citations po. Siguro 4 to 5 citations may be enough, no? But not more than that. Kasi po, after all, your research is an IMRAD format po kasi is masyado na po siyang konti yung laman, no? Or konti yung content, and to include so many citations might not be a good idea kasi parang lumabas, kinuha mo na lang ng kinuha sa iba yung isinulat mo, no, sa introduction, na dapat sa introduction kayo po talaga ang gumagawa ng maraming pagsusulat dyan. Base din po sa mga nakalap yung mga impormasyon. Remember, introduction leads logically to and clearly states the hypothesis or principal theme of the paper. Okay, so dapat po mabanggit na rin po yung magiging hypothesis, or at least a glimpse of the hypothesis and the principal theme ay mabanggit na po in the introduction. The introduction should be relatively brief. Most journals recommend less than 500 words. Avoid repetition. Do not repeat the abstract in the introduction. Although ito yung karaniwang mistake ng mga researchers din po talaga, na kung ano po yung nakalagay sa abstract ay yun din po yung nababanggit nila sa introduction. Okay, but although it's really hard to avoid kasi nga po yung buwelo kasi ng research mo ay nasa introduction. Paano mo din sisimulan yung abstract mo without, of course, using some contents of the introduction. So, nasa diskarte na lang po talaga ng mga researcher yan. But that's the general rules. Avoid repetition. Do not repeat the abstract in the introduction. And at the same time, an introduction in the discussion. So, pati dun sa discussion, sa bandang latter part na ng ating IMRAD template, kung ano po yung laman ng introduction, hindi binabanggit sa discussion. So let's avoid that daw po. Do not go into an extensive literature review. 2 to 4 relevant and recent citations should be adequate to corroborate a statement. 2 to 4 daw po yung ina-advise ng ating mga authors, ito nila na ear, no? Pero I guess 3 to 4 might be a good number, no? 5 may also be accepted, no? But more than that, I guess, is excessive na. Now, after the introduction, the next part is materials and methods, no? Thus forming the I, introduction, and the M, materials and methods. The purpose of this section is to present in a simple and direct manner what has been done, how and when and how the data were analyzed and presented. This section should provide all information needed to allow another researcher to judge the study or actually repeat the experiment. So, pagdating po sa materials and methods, dito po yung discussion ng ginamit po nating methodology. Okay? Dito din po binanggit yung mga tools and materials na gagamitin natin to check on the hypothesis. Okay, ano bang mga statistical tools? Ano bang mga mathematical computations ang in-apply natin para ma-determine natin yung mga result ng ating research. Okay? So, ano ba? Nandito rin po mababanggit yung mga people or persons involved in your research, no? Such as yung mga respondents na tinatawag, no? And maybe a little bit of their background also. Okay? So basically, kung ano po yung madalas natin nakikita sa chapter 3, sila po yung laman usually ng chapter 3, which is research methodology. Na? Siya po usually ang laman nitong 2.6 natin, materials and methods. Now, to discuss, to read some of the contents provided here, no? Sabi dito, this section should provide all the information needed to allow another researcher to judge the study or actually repeat the experiment. Okay, as I have said, no, may kinalaman po siya sa mga tools and mga instrumentations na ginamit para ma-derive or makuha po natin yung result ng ating research. The simplest way to organize this section is chronologically, with as much precision and details as necessary, but avoid unnecessary details that the readers are supposed to know. Standard methods need only be mentioned or may be described by reference to the literature as long as it is readily available. So chronological daw po yung sundin nating order, no? Of course, hindi naman po kasi dapat isinusulat natin yung ating yung content ng ating research nang walang direksyon, no? So the chronological order is the most preferable order, no? Or yung type ng sequence ng ating mga discussions. Okay po? So with as much precision and detail as necessary, but avoid unnecessary details that the readers are supposed to know. Ibig sabihin ng are supposed to know, alam na po ng mga readers yun, so dapat hindi na po natin binabalik. Like for example, a descriptive research is a ganyan, ganito, ganyan. So dapat hindi na po natin banggitin because most likely, researchers already knew exactly what these are. No? Kasi hindi naman po gagawa or magsusulat ng isang isang researcher kung hindi naman siya natutunan or naturuan kung ano yung mga bagay na kailangan niyang gamitin in his research, no? So, hindi na po dapat natin dinidiscuss pa yung mga ganun. Okay? Pero kung mga one-liner lang naman or mga one sentence lang naman siguro, I guess acceptable pa but not too much, no? Kaya nga sabi dito, with as much precision and detail as necessary. Okay? May precision. No? Pwede mong banggitin pero dapat may precision, meaning eksakto dapat or konting-konting detalye lang ang pwede mong ilagay. Okay po? Standard methods need only be mentioned. Okay? Banggitin lang at hindi na po kailangang ipaliwanag pa. Next. So ano po ba dapat ang mga karaniwang content ng materials and methods? Description of the study location or yung tinatawag nating scope and delimitation, no? Yung parang mga ganun. Okay, pwede rin yung mga significance of the study, pwedeng kasama din po dyan, no? Design the experiment with number of replications and sampling procedures used. Okay, so yung ginamit mo pong way para ma-determine yung mga respondents mo, yung justification, why do you consider them as your respondents, so on and so forth. Okay? People or respondents involved with the exact and definite descriptions. Assumptions made and their rationale. Okay, so nagawa yung tinatawag nating hypothesis. No? So parang may konti kang assumption dyan. And then of course, bakit yun yung assumption mo? Okay? And then lastly, statistical and mathematical procedures used to analyze and summarize the data. Okay? But just like what the previous slide told us, no? So hindi po dapat masyadong detalyado na, no? Yung pagkaka-discuss dyan ng statistical and mathematical procedures. Okay? Konti lang po na mga impormasyon na pwedeng ibahagi. Okay? Kasi nga po, karamihan naman dyan is aware na o alam na po ng mga researchers. Okay po? Next. After po nating matapos yung materials and methods, we will now proceed to results. Okay, ano po ba yung mga naging resulta mula doon sa materials and methods? So matapos po nating i-apply yung mga methodologies na meron tayo in the previous part, i-interpret na po natin or i-discuss na po natin yung naging resulta ng research. This section represents the new knowledge. Therefore, it is the core of the paper. Note that the introduction and materials and methods section are needed and designed to say why and how the authors arrived at what presented in this section, the meaning of which will then be explained in the discussion section. So dito po ilalabas po natin yung resulta ng ating ginawang pag-aaral or pagre-research. Okay? So pwede pong ipakita dito yung mga tables, okay, mga findings ng mga computations na ginawa, etc. etc. But again, mayroon pong discussion na part, so doon po dapat makita yung kung paano po na-derive yung mga at yung interpretation ng mga na-derive na results. Thus, the value of the paper depends on what is contained in this result section, and it must be presented in an absolutely clear manner in which the right number of words, neither more nor less. It is usually easiest to follow the results if they are presented in the same order as the objectives are presented in the introduction. Okay? So, dito po kailangan maging clear. No? It must be presented in a clear manner. No? Okay? With the right number of words. No? Hindi po dapat masyadong wordy. No? Kasi po, mayroon naman pong part para i-discuss yung result talaga. Okay? Yung result or yung findings ng ating study. Okay? Which is in the discussion. Next, some guidelines in presenting the results are given below. Present the results simply and clearly. So dapat simple lang po ang pagkaka-present natin ng mga results. Report only the representative data rather than endlessly repetitive data. Okay? Ako po ang ginamit ko dito is yung tabular presentation. Do not report larger masses of data. Reduce them to statistically analyzed summary forms and present in tables or figures along with essential statistical information to facilitate the understanding and comparing them. Excuse me. So next is repeat in the text only the most important findings shown in the table and graphs. In other words, do not repeat in the text or all or many of the data presented in tables and figures. Excuse me. Last but definitely not the least, avoid verbose or mga wordy expressions. Okay po. Now more about the results. Tables and figures are integral part of the well-written scientific paper. Okay? And they appear in the results section, but there are exemptions. While tables present accurate numbers, figures show trends and features. Do not present the same data in the tables and graphs. Actually, itong part na to, dulong part na binanggit na bullet is depende na lang din po yan sa kung paano ipe-present ng researcher yung kanyang mga naging results, no, o yung mga lumabas na mga data sa kanyang ginawang mga computations. Okay? Moving forward tayo, 2.8, discussion. This section where the authors explain meanings and implications of the results. The section pulls everything together and shows the importance and value of the work and is therefore the most innovative and difficult part of the paper to write. Yes, kasi po, bakit po most difficult part of the paper to write? Kasi po talagang i-interpret na po natin yung mga naging findings or mga naging resulta ng ating ginawang resulta ng ating study. Okay? Kaya po medyo madami-dami po tayong kailangang isulat or i-type dito. Okay po? Kasi nga po, discussion siya. So dapat makapag-i-discuss ni researcher or explain or interpret ni researcher kung bakit ganun yung mga lumabas na mga resulta. Okay? And of course, kasabay din po niyan ng pagsilip din sa ibang mga research at i-cite kung yung mga resultang lumabas po sa inyong research ay may pagkakaparehas o pagkakatugma sa mga dating research o kaya naman ay taliwas sa resulta ng ibang mga researchers. Ganun pa man, whether they are similar to other researches or different to other researchers' findings, you still have to justify and discuss bakit kaya parehas sa study ni researcher A or bakit kaya iba sa ang resulta ng ating research sa ginawang research ni researcher B. No? So, kasama po yan sa discussion. The author's skills in interpreting the results in the light of known facts and using the results as evidence for innovative explanations of the observed behavior should push the front line of the frontiers of knowledge and arouse the reader's enthusiasm. Without such an engaging discussion, the reader may leave saying, "So what? Move on to other more interesting papers." No? So, napaka-critical pa rin po ng part na to ng ating IMRAD format or IMRAD template kasi nga po, dito makikita kung paano, kung gaano kahusay sa pagsusulat at pag-i-interpret ng kanyang nalalaman, no? Yung researcher, no? Kaya dapat mahusay yung kanyang deliver ng mga lines at ng mga statements niya. Or else, baka mabore yung ating mga readers, no? At sabihin na parang walang sense yung ating ginawang research. Okay? Kahit pa sabihin natin nag-effort tayo na gawin at tapusin yung research natin, pero pwedeng magkaroon ng impression na hindi maganda yung quality ng research natin because of our poor writing skills. Okay po? Next is, a good discussion should include the following. Not repeat what has already been said in the review of literature. Okay. Relate the results to the questions that were set out in the introduction. Show how the results and interpretations agree or do not agree with current knowledge of the subject. Yan, nabanggit ko na po yan kanina. Ipakita po kung ang naging resulta ba o findings ba ng inyong research ay tumutugon or sumasang-ayon sa dati ng mga research, and then ipaliwanag natin bakit. Same thing kung nag-disagree naman siya sa naging findings or result ng ibang mga researches, kailangan din ipaliwanag bakit ganun ang naging findings natin. Explain the theoretical background of the observed results, indicate the significance of the results, suggest future research that is planned or needed to follow up, deal only the results reported in the study, stay away from generalization that are not substantiated by the results presented, state conclusions with evidence for each. So yan po yung mga dapat nating tandaan kapag isinusulat na natin yung discussion. Again, yung IMRAD template po, IMRAD format po, halos lahat ng part niya ay sobrang importante, but you have to give greater importance, no, and greater effort in writing the discussion kasi po nandito po makikita yung bigat at yung bigat, no, at yung impact ng ating research. Okay? Kaya po sabi dyan, indicate the significance of the results. Suggest future research that is planned or needed to follow up, no? So kailangan ma-emphasize niyo po yung mga yan. Okay? Next, discussion, more about discussion. Current knowledge from literature is stated in the present tense, whereas the work being reported and discussed in the paper, your own work should be presented in past tense. Okay? So yung ginamit mo pong mga citations o yung mga literature, no, yung mga iba pang mga resources and materials na ginamit mo para isulat itong research mong ito, I must be written down in present tense while you should present your research in past tense. Kasi po tapos na po yung ginawa mong research kaya nga pinapublish mo na siya. Mismatch between statement, objectives, and discussion, conclusion is a very common problem in many manuscripts. Analytical insight is what we should strive for in the discussion section, but unfortunately, it is difficult to describe how to accomplish that. So, kailangan din daw pong pag-aralang mabuti, no? Baka may mga mismatches na nangyayari between your objectives and your discussion. Okay, remember that in the introduction, na-establish mo dapat yung objective ng research mo. At dapat makita yun sa bandang dulo, no? Kung na-meet ba ng inyong results and discussion yung in-establish yung mga objectives sa introduction. Okay po? Fast track na po tayo sa iba pang mga parts. Another common problem in the discussion section is the tendency to move away from the stated objectives and try to solve all problems. Okay, so basically, kailangan daw po nating mag-stick to what was stated in the objectives no in our introduction. Okay? Kasi hindi naman po natin kayang bigyan po talaga ng solusyon ang lahat ng problema. In short po, ang ibig po sabihin ng statement na yan is wag na po nating itap yung mga bagay na hindi naman talaga intended na isolve ng ating research, no? Okay. Anyway, nakalagay naman yan sa sa ating SOP, di ba? Sa statement of the problem. Yun na po yung mga objectives natin, no? At yun lang dapat ang isolve ng ating research. Huwag na po nating tangkaing sagutin pa yung mga bagay na hindi naman saklaw ng ating research. Okay po? Some amount of speculative discussion, however, is in order to elicit excitement and motivate future research. The line between optimum and excess is often faint. The scientist has to do something balancing to separate growth from reasoning. So ito po yung isa sa mga nabanggit ng isa sa ating mga author ng Sinair. Several hilarious stories are available to describe how the interpretation of observed results, the essence of discussion, should be interpreted. Okay? So, I guess ito po yung isa sa mga example na pwedeng na ginamit ng ating mga author, anong ating reference na ginagamit ngayon, to describe how to write the discussion part of our research. Okay? So, apart from the discussions, meron din po tayong conclusions. Although ito po ay isang optional part, depende na lang po talaga kung hanapin sa atin ng ating research journal. Okay? Conclusions should rather than just repeating results, state well-articulated outcomes of the study and briefly suggest feature lines of research in which area-based findings reported in the paper. Okay, so this is basically what we include usually in conclusions are ano po yung naging impression ni researcher doon sa ginawa niyang research, no? At kung paano niya nahanap yung sagot sa mga problemang in-state niya doon sa introduction, which is the SOP, no? At kung paano na-meet yung objectives na kanyang in-establish, no? Again, in the introduction. Okay? So yan po yung dapat niyang ilagay sa conclusion. Some journals do not allow a separate conclusion section. Agree, no? Hindi naman po lahat kasi ay hinahanapan pa ng conclusion. Results and discussion is already enough, no? But for some research journals, nanghihingi pa po sila ng conclusion part, no? But that basically is more on the impressions na lang po talaga ng researcher, no? So para sa kanya, ano po yung perspective ni researcher doon sa ginawa niyang research. Okay? So references may also be included, no, at the end of our research paper. No? Pagkatapos po ng discussion or kung may conclusion pa, no, ang kasunod na po nun is yung mga references or bibliographies. Okay? Of course, using the right format, no, in citing our references. Hindi lang po basta-basta natin dinadampot yung mga links ng mga website, no, para sabihin na yun po yung reference nyo. No? Like in this presentation, no, pinakita ko po sa inyo doon sa title page na agad, no, para ma-highlight natin na ito pong ginamit nating material ay hindi po talaga gawa ko, no, kundi gawa po ng ibang mga researchers. At in-interpret ko lang po para sa inyo. Last is ito po yung website na pinagkuhanan natin ng research material na to, at ito po yung title ng kanilang research, no, Scientific Writing and Communication in Agriculture and Natural Resources, at ang mga authors ay sila Nair, PKR at Nair VD. Okay, now I'm going to be showing you the research that the published research that I did, no, for a certain research journal named Kahusayan. Okay, kahusayan research journal which is um, sponsored by sponsored by IIRC, no, or Integrated International Research Conference. So ito po yung published research ko na na gagamitin natin ngayon or para makapag-provide din sa inyo ng halimbawa no, kung paano po ba isinusulat ang isang IMRAD format ng isang research. Okay? Ng isang research. So nandiyan po yung title niya, Social Development Program, The Case of Southeast Asian Countries. Yung second na part is about the author, no? Okay. So yung author, okay. Tapos konting detalye tungkol sa kanya. So I guess you don't have to write everything here, no? Kundi pangalan mo lang, no, at kung saan kang konektadong eskwelahan or universidad. Okay, the next part is the keywords, no? So in my research, ito po yung mga napili ko mga keywords. Okay? By the way, this IMRAD format ng aking published journal is only 13 pages long. Okay? Pero ang ni-require nga sa akin no, ng kahusayan research journal is 12 pages lang. But I've exceeded kasi nga po naglagay pa ako ng abstract. Okay? Now, the next part is the abstract. So, ito po yung part na yan. Okay? Ganyan lang po ka-easy yung abstract. It's around 250 words lang po. Okay? Then, the next part is the introduction. So, yun na po yung laman niya. No? So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Medyo mahaba-haba po yung introduction ko kasi po I am tapping 4 different countries here. No? Hindi lang po siya isang bansa. No? This is a collection of 4 different countries. Kaya nga po, the case of Southeast Asian countries. No? These involve the Philippines, Laos, Vietnam, and Indonesia. Okay, so this study focused on these 4 Southeast Asian countries: Lao, People Democratic Republic, the Indonesia, Philippines, and Vietnam. So kaya po medyo may kahabaan ng konti yung aking introduction because it covers not only one country but 4 different countries. And along with it is yung statement of the problem or yung ating objectives of the research. Okay? So ito po yung mga katanungan na kailangan i-address in this particular study. Okay? Hanggang 4 na tanong lang po. And then ito na po yung lalabas na research design and methodology or pwede nating tawaging materials and methods. Okay? And then, results and discussion. Ito na po siya. Okay? Ayan. Pinagsama ko na po yung results at saka yung discussion. Okay? Kasi parang ang hirap din po kasi nilang paghiwalayin na yung result nasa ibang page tapos yung discussion nasa ibang page din. So in my case, pinagsama ko na po sila. Okay? Ito po yung result ng ginawang data gathering, and nandiyan na rin po yung interpretation, okay? And nandiyan na rin po yung analysis. Kasunod na po niyan yung analysis. Ayan. Okay? On the next table, ito po yung results no, ng data gathering, and then ito po yung interpretation, and then followed by the analysis. Okay? Same thing for table 3, same thing for table 4, same thing for table 5, until table 6. Okay po? And then since meron po akong question regarding challenges encountered, no? So isa pang tanong din yan sa SOP, no? So andito po yung kanyang discussion. Okay? Now, matapos po yung yung uh, yung yung results and discussion, pwede po nating lagyan ng recommendations and conclusions. Okay? But in my case, ang ginamit ko po recommendation kasi po during the study, since the study is focused on solving poverty problems, no, in Southeast Asia, conclusion is not enough, no? So kailangan po nating magbigay ng recommendation, no? Besides, kasama po sa tanong sa SOP is yung what recommendations may be proposed based on the findings of the study. So therefore, recommendation na kailangan nating ibigay. Okay? So, at ito po yung ating magiging recommendation. Okay? Para ma-solve po yung issues ng poverty sa Southeast Asia. Okay? So, may ganyan po siya. Of course, derived din po yan sa iba't ibang mga practices ng iba't ibang mga bansa sa Southeast Asia. Okay? And then there's the bibliography or yung references. Okay? And that's it. So, yun po yung ating sample na template ng IMRAD. Ng isang research paper using the IMRAD template. Okay? So, I hope meron po kayong natutunan dito po sa ating simpleng presentation kung paano po gumawa ng isang research o ng isang IMRAD template na research. Okay po? So, once again, this has been Dr. Ferdinand Paano from University of Makati, and until next time, no? So sana po sundan niyo po ang iba pang mga video lectures na aking i-share sa inyo, no, in my YouTube channel. Thank you so much and God bless. Good luck sa paggawa ng research, by the way. Thank you.